Here are my top areas for you to buy a home if you're contemplating where you should buy to have a good public school. This is coming from a lot of people who have asked me these questions where the millennial demographics who had kids during the pandemic, their kids are becoming of age right now and they're going to buy a home so that their kids go to good school, because a lot of them are asking me these questions. Now, a lot of these buyers are moving up from a condo or they're buying a new home, and generally ground-based 3-bedroom, 2 or 3 bathroom, like an entry-level freehold home in the GTA. And these are the areas that I would recommend you consider when you're trying to buy a home with a good school. Now, if you do want to work with our team who understands a lot of these kind of needs for millennials who are moving up into a freehold home or just trying to get into a good school in a good area, you could book a call with me using the link that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and the time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zen, and I run and operate a RE/MAX in the Greater Toronto Area, on top of making awesome educational real estate content just like this one for you. Now, I'm going to give you my top areas that a lot of people have been asking me of, like, where should I buy a home so that my kids can go to good public school? And by no means is this a very extensive list. These are the ones I just generally recommend. And this is by no means also throwing shade to where you live or what school your kid goes to, but these are the more popular ones that people generally ask me about, right? So without further ado, we're going to start in Toronto. So we're going to be looking in kind of the East End area. So you're east of Don Mills right now. Sorry, not Don Mills, Don Valley Parkway. And you have a lot of really good schools here. Now, one of the things you got to keep in mind when we're talking about schools is you're starting from JK, generally to grade 6. Some will get you to grade 8. And that's generally a 9 to 10 year duration. So imagine buying that home for 10 years. You'll be fine in terms of doing value, because a lot of these areas, they hold their value very well, because generally other people who are younger, who haven't had kids yet, will move in by the time your kids go to high school, right? Now, in the East End of Toronto, the homes here are a little bit older. So you're generally looking for some kind of 3-bedroom, 2 or 3 washroom. And the main reason you generally move out of these homes is, 1, trying to get into a good high school, or 2, you don't have enough bathroom as your family grows, or you need more parking spots, right? But generally, you're kind of looking in this East End area where you're going to catch the schools Franklin, Jackman, Withrow, Pape, and Wilkinson, right? So I've picked out these areas because, 1, these schools are ranked really high based on the Fraser Institute. But do keep in mind, these rankings are out of 10, but they're based on marks and grades, so they're not always accurate. There are a lot of really well-ranked schools that are like 5 and 6, but these are just the ones that are very popular that people try to get into, right? So in this map here, these are the ones I've named, and you can basically see in the Google Maps that you kind of want to be south of Mortimer. You can run all the way to about Greenwood for catching Wilkinson, and you're going to come down Pape and this little pocket here. So these are your homes that are going to range somewhere between, like, a little bit under $1 million to $1 million, depending on the finishes and how nice they are and whether they've been regutted, renovated, or whatnot, right? So the condition and the amount of parking dictates, right? But for you to be, close to Toronto and you want to, say, commute downtown and get to work, generally most people are going to be in the East End because it's the most reasonably priced, because the Midtown and like a little bit north of that, like Yonge and Lawrence, is more expensive, and the West End is a little bit more expensive for the level of schools that you kind of get, right? So the East End is where it's at right now. Now, one of the bonuses of being in East End is actually the Riverdale school is actually pretty good for high school. So you could stay there even longer, all the way up until basically grade 12. So, like, that could be like a 15-year-old home, a 15-year home for you, right? I know Riverdale really well. We used to play badminton against them. We always get smoked, but they always win. They're like the best there. So I don't know if they still are, but Riverdale is actually a really well-ranked school. Now, when you're in the East York, it is very, very competitive right now at the time of shooting this. So you're going to run into a lot of competition, especially if you're north of Danforth. Now, for a lot of buyers who are out there kind of looking for where you can find out which school you go to, if you just are in Toronto, you can go to the Toronto District School Board, TDSB, find my school. You can put your address and it'll tell you based on the number kind of which school you're in. Because sometimes if you're on a street, depending on odd or even on which side of the street, you may or may not catch that school, right? So it's hard for me to distill all that knowledge to you and doing this for a long time, but you could use this to check. Now, a lot of people do use the House Sigma app. At the bottom, there is kind of like what schools they are ranking from, but I would generally recommend you use the TDSB site or kind of like other regional school boards as well, just because it's more accurate than, say, something that crawls and scrapes the algorithm, right? Now we're going to move into the West End side. Generally, a lot of people do want to live around kind of like the Trinity Bellwoods area, but there's no good schools there, generally speaking. I grew up there. The school I went to was like a 2.9. I turned out fine, but you know, like some people don't want to go there, right? So if you do want to be in the West End, there's basically two schools you're trying to target, which is Howard and Fern, which is in Ronsonville. You generally want to be north of this side over here, and it's a very small pocket to kind of get into, right? Because once you go any further west, you go into High Park, you get into Swansea, those type of homes are a lot more expensive. So the west side properties, you're probably clearing 1.1, 1.2 just to be in Ronsonville, and you're getting a little bit less space than the East End. But if you do like the West End more, that's kind of really what your choices are, right? So there's a pocket of Ronsonville that's good, but there's certain pockets you do want to avoid because you want to stay away from certain pockets that, you know, have a little bit of a thing going on with there, like a bad name, right? So that's kind of what I would say you should target. Now, if you do want to stay in Toronto, and that's kind of one of your price point, right? You can go all the way into Mimico, and you'll have one decent school here, which is John English, and it goes all the way to grade 8, right? So as long as you're clearing a certain part, you can still get access to Humber Bay and Toronto and still be in a good school. Now, the homes here are probably similar to the ones in East York, where you're kind of like Edwardians and Victorians. You're starting around like the $1 million for a 3-bedroom, 2-washroom, and you do have parking. You just got to make sure you catch the school, because the John English Junior Public School isn't that big of a catch radius, right? If you found any of this content useful, make sure to help me spread the knowledge out there, because I'm sure you have friends who are also in the same situation as you. I know a lot of moms out there, they have a lot of mom groups talking about a lot of the baby things, and public school does come up, right? So you can share this video with them if they're contemplating where to move to get into a better school district. And while you're at it, make sure you like the video and subscribe to Prime Props channel, because every single week we put out awesome content like this just to share and help you navigate the real estate market. And if you're looking for some help on how to navigate this market and trying to get into a good public school and kind of weigh the pros and cons of each area and also the schools and location, there's a lot of decision points. You can book a call with me using the link right here, www.chatwithzen.com. Now we're going to move into the North York area, so we'll call that Yonge and Sheppard, which is what I have highlighted here. You basically have really expensive homes here, and the reason why I'm just talking about this area is because there are actually certain condos that allow you to get into certain really good schools, right? So your really good schools here are Avondale Park Alternative, not Avondale. That's a whole separate video on its own, but you want to be an Avondale Alternative, which I think by Fraser is actually ranked the first school in all of Ontario right now. And then you also have Hollywood and McKee. So you're generally on the east side of Yonge. There are older condos that allow you to go into a lot of these schools, but there's also new condos and apartment buildings where if you do move into them, they actually make you sign a declaration that you can't get into these schools, right? Because there's a very small amount of space for these schools to get into, and they make you sign that declaration that you're not going to be going into it, even though you may catch their radius. So this one, I can't really say where and what. We know which buildings allow you to go into them, but they're generally the older ones. So you can actually get into these schools for like even less than $1 million, but you're looking at a condo, and depending on how much size you need for your family, it may or may not work, because you know most of these homes here are like $2-3 million. Now, one of the benefits being in this area is you do catch Earl Haig, which is a very, very well-known school. It's super well-known even in like the Asian community in like Hong Kong and China, so a lot of people flock over here. So they actually have a really big catch radius, as with most high schools, but as with most condo buildings, you have to sign that declaration not letting you in, right? So that's kind of how North York kind of functions. But that is a really nice area because a lot of people do like the fact that you're along the Yonge subway line and you can go downtown fairly easily, right? So I would put that there as an asterisk just because of certain condos being able to get there. Now, the next one we got here, we're going to Richmond Hill. So we're running right up along the 404. Richmond Hill, you know, for how great it is, it really doesn't have that many great schools because certain pockets of it have really, really expensive homes so that you can actually get into the good schools, right? So there's two schools you're basically trying to target. You want to get into Richmond Rose and you want to get into Silverstream. So I have that right here. You can't really get into any other school because of the price point of the areas, but for the $1 million to $1.5 million, right, you can basically get in this block over here between Leslie, Bayview, Elgin, Major Mac, and you can catch both those schools. And one of the benefits of being in this area is that the homes are a little bit newer, so you're going to get a little bit more space and a little bit more efficient layout. And the high schools are actually pretty good too, right? So you can get nearby, you can get into Bayview Secondary, or you can get into Richmond Green, right? So this is a very nice little pocket, but it may not be for some people because you're kind of really far north at this point, right? Like you're way past up north. But for a lot of people who want to be in the York region, this is like kind of like a pocket I would say you should target. Anything kind of along Yonge schools, like, it's okay, right? And then we're going to move into Markham. A lot of people want to go into Markham because basically every single school in Markham is ranked incredibly well, right? Just based on the rankings. So if you're kind of in like this little pocket over here, you can catch Buttonville, Clodale, and you basically catch Unionville High School, which is over here, but this entire area is fairly expensive over here. Now you could be in this little pocket over here where there are some subdivision homes for like $1 million plus, and you'll get really good schools as well. So this is Alexander Miro, or you can go further north up to Cathedral Home, where you can get into Victoria Square Public School, which is also ranked very, very high as well. And again, most of these will have a very good public school and a high school as well. Now, I don't know how about you, but like if these rankings are based on grades, and say like the Asian community in Markham is all about go to school, get good grades, they're probably pretty high and elevated. That's kind of why a lot of people want to be there. Now, with the homes that are further west to 404 over here, they're going to be a lot more expensive. So getting to these schools may be a little bit harder, right? Except for the little pockets I called out for you. But when you go a little bit further east, the schools are still very, very good, and you can actually get into some pretty reasonable homes, decent size, and very good schools, right? So you're getting to Berksey Village over here, and also Wismer Commons, right? You can get into the Wismer Public School. You can also get into Wismer, and the high school is also very good, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So you can catch a lot of those. Again, Markham has a lot of these kind of like what I call the trifecta, which is like public school, middle school, or like those two combined, and the high school is good. So it could be like a 15-year-old home for you, right? Now there is a little cool little pocket right by Unionville that is like sub $1 million, like 1.1, and you can get like a 3 to 4 bedroom. There are condo towns built by Tridel with very, very low maintenance fee. There's not many of them out there, but if they do come up, they're generally pretty popular because you actually catch all the really good schools and you're in a very good area. You're just not in a freehold home, but in like a freehold townhome with a very low maintenance fee built by Tridel. So that's something I would recommend if you're price sensitive. Now, if you want to get even into like good schools, but you want to still stay in the Markham area, if you go to kind of the Greensboro area over here, that's kind of where most of the prices are going to become even lower, right? So you can get freehold homes closer to $1 million, and you can get really good schools over here. You can get to Black Walnut. Mount Joy is very, very good. Now, if you're concerned about like the commute, Mount Joy station does bring you all the way down to Union. So that's why that kind of area has been being built up by a lot of like young professionals who are moving there for good schools, access to downtown, and you actually have enough space for like 2 cars, right? And that also catches Burr Oak Secondary, which is actually ranked very, very high. So those are kind of like the areas I would recommend in terms of like school for you kind of consider. Look, by no means is this kind of like, these are the only areas you get into, because I actually didn't really cover most things west of Yonge, because there's a lot of good school districts in Vaughan and Mississauga as well, right? These are just the ones that a lot of my clients kind of ask me for. And these are the more popular ones because they're still within that call like million to $1.5 million range in really, really, really good school districts, right? So you are that person that who's looking to buy a home in a good school district, and we're trying to juggle price, space, and also location to school, and also the commute to kind of your office. If you're going back to office, you can give me a call, and we can talk about kind of which areas are working for you and kind of what competition there is right now using the link that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.